Thank you for listening today on Revealing Wholeness, sponsored by Infinity Whole Health. Check out our website at infinityWholeHealth.com, where we are revealing the eternal in each individual, the infinite in the individual. The creativity is made manifest. Limitation is let go. Now, here's your host, Dr. Troy Munson.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Troy Munson on Revealing Wholeness. Today is really exercise number 4. We've been working with the brain, slowly undoing some thoughts. And this particular thought for today that we're going to be working on is probably, the last one that I'll do is a single for a little bit. From here on out, we're going to have 2 exercises each time you hear from me. And those of you that are maybe years from now that have all the recordings lined up, where there may be 40, 50, 60, 100 exercises to try to help undo your mind and the mental thinking that tends to lead us to a lot of unhappiness. I'll ask you definitely, and I've asked you last time, not to do more than 1 a day. And so when we hit the next couple where we're doing 2 at once, they're going to be similar enough that we could probably do both in 1 day, but I might ask you to do them over a couple of days and experiment with them a little bit, see what your mind comes up with, see how it's reacting to the idea, and where do we go from there. And so I'm going to preface this one today as, imagine if you could go back to yourself 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and you could tell yourself a couple of things that, man, you really should try to have done this differently, or if you can, or if this person comes in your life, just run like mad. Or if this situation happens to you, I want to tell you that it's going to be okay. Or whatever it is that you would go back and tell yourself what you might do. I mean, those are okay conversations to have. I now imagine myself, what would my 60-year-old or 70-year-old or 80-year-old self come back and tell me now? And oftentimes now, as I've grown older, I really don't care for that actual knowledge anymore, where sometimes I think, man, in my past, I really wish I would have been able to tell myself not to do this. And yet those times can be important to us in how it builds us in character. In fact, if I didn't have all the times in my life that were difficult, I could not be sitting here talking to you right now in helping you where you are trying to get beyond what it is you're dealing with, or get to a greater sense of peace or fulfillment and love in your life, which is where we're going, and healing. And so now I'm going to kind of flip that a little bit. We also tend to not only judge things that happen to us on a spur of the moment as good or bad, but I also want to show that not only would maybe we not want those old events that we had gone through in our past that caused us a certain amount of pain that produced the character that we are now, but I'm going to have you look back at, let's say, when you're 4 years of age. And I've done this with my kids. I said, when you were 4 years old, you liked to play with blocks. When you were 12, did you still like to play with blocks? Well, no. Well, now at 12, if you like video games, at 18, do you still play those same video games, or have you evolved beyond that, or graduated to something more than that? Well, yeah, I think dating's much cooler now. I got it. And then at age 30, I look back and say, do you still do the same things at 30 that you do at 18? Now, some of you actually might still be doing that, which is kind of funny, but for most of us, we tend to graduate, and at 30, we're not doing what we're doing at 18. And then at now when we're 30, if we now advance on to 50, are we doing the same things at 50 that we are at 30? Many of us may not be. Some of us may still be, but you'll kind of watch. Are you still progressing? Are you still growing? Are you still changing and moving forward? That's normal growth. At some point in time, I keep thinking I'm going to get to a point where I'm going to look back and say, hey, I'm actually kind of the same, because maybe I've reached it. And as we get through these lessons, we're going to start talking more and more about the changeless self that is the deeper level of self that you are. So we tend to grow and learn and change, at least it appears that way on the outside. And we tend to say, I want less bad things in my life, and I want more good things in my life. And so we have this kind of push and pull mentality going on day to day, all the time. And so this next exercise is really kind of to start undoing that and really suspending judgment more. We've already talked about trying to let go of judgment and working on that. So this is yet another exercise to do that. So at this point, I don't want you to examine your mind endlessly for the things that you've labeled good and bad. That's not the purpose. Again, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute max is enough time to go through this maybe once or twice today. And so here's the thought. As you look at your brain and your mind and its activity, this is what I want you to look for. These thoughts do not mean anything. They're like the things I see in this room. So last time we talked about the things you see in this room do not mean anything. But now we're going to go into really hitting heavily into the thought. And this is what we really consider a first level error, where our thoughts are the first things we do. So we see something, we see it, and if we don't judge it or think anything about it, we really don't create any kind of memory or block or yay or wow or excitement about that thing. It stays neutral as it always has been. Because as we looked around the room last time, we said everything here is really actually neutral. But when we label a wall good or bad, or a chair good or bad, or the floor good or bad, or my clothes good or bad, or somebody else's personality good or bad, these now begin to really change our thinking about all things. And that produces a lot more fear and uncertainty, because as we label one thing a certain, we give it a characteristic, it can change. You know, a chair can change into a paperweight. A chair can change into a ladder. A chair can change into a desk. And so all of a sudden it now is not what we've really labeled it. And that starts to create uncertainty. And I know it sounds kind of mundane or silly, but any uncertainty in the mind tends to create and produce fear on whatever level. And so we're trying to take away or belay this judgment that we have all the time, that we're constantly in the midst of judging everything. And inevitably that leads to fear for us, because that means that everybody's judging me too. And so as we work on that, these thoughts that I'm thinking right now do not mean anything. And so we can repeat that from time to time throughout the minute of just kind of doing some mind searching. And so it might look like this. This thought about my job does not mean anything to me. It's like the things in this room or on the street or outside of my car if I'm driving. These things don't mean anything to me. These thoughts don't mean anything to me. And so as we go about this, you're just going to kind of interject into that space. This thought about blank does not mean anything. It's like the things I see in this room. And so we're going to work on that for a couple times today, maybe even tomorrow. And if you're picking this up weekly, then I hope to definitely see you next week for the next work or the next exercise. And as we progress forward into cleaning up our head and really getting some things happening, I'm going to share some personal events. I just had an epiphany today, so I can't wait to share it within the next couple of exercises. And I expect you to have them too. And if you have this aha moment of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've been hanging on to this negative energy, and when I released it, there was so much more joy, so much more peace in my life, man, shoot me an email. I'd love to know what you're experiencing, and it does mean something to me, because that's one of us, part of us, because we're all one, that's releasing and gaining greater abundance in love and joy and peace, all the things that we really are, and not all the stuff that we pile on us in this place. So until next time, I'm Dr. Troy Munson on Revealing Wholeness.
This concludes another episode of Revealing Wholeness with Dr. Troy Munson. If you have any questions concerning this podcast or others, you can reach Dr. Munson by email at chiroman, that's CHIRO-man, @dr.com. Or you can call him at his office during office operation hours at 360-893-8586. This show is sponsored by Infinity Whole Health on the Disruptors Podcast Network.